Hey guys, welcome back to another edition of Intuitive Angling. Really appreciate you guys making some time out of your day to watch the video. And I'm down here at Grand Lake for first practice day for the Toyota Series tournament that begins on Thursday. Going to give you guys my first day practice report and sort of give you guys my thoughts on the tournament. And before I do that, I got a little bit of bitching I want to do before I start. Not really bitching, but I just sort of want to bring to everybody's attention sort of the reality of the situation down here at Grand Lake. First, I'll tell you a little bit of a story. Grand Lake is the lake where I learned how to bass fish. I love Grand Lake. Back in the late 1960s, my dad started taking me down here. Him and a friend of his, growing up in Joplin, Missouri, we only live about 40 miles away from one part of Grand Lake here. So we go down every weekend, and that's where I learned how to caught my first bass here, my first white bass. That's where my love for fishing started, here at Grand Lake. And in the mid 1970s, my mom and dad bought a little trailer house down here on Grand Lake in a place called the Greenbrier Resort, little mom and pop resort. So for the next 35 years, we came down to Grand Lake every single weekend almost. So I've got thousands and thousands of days on Grand Lake. I know it like the back of my hand. I've fished hundreds of tournaments here. Grand Lake is like my second home. I've fished it for so many years. That being said, I want to bring a couple things on here. Grand Lake is not the same lake that I grew up loving. Back when I was fishing it every weekend, fishing all the tournaments here back in the 80s and 90s, it's a shadow of itself here. That not only the way that you have to fish, but the quality of the fishing. And there's the main reason that it's a shadow itself is because the Grand Lake is the poster child for a lake that has too many tournaments on it. The worst thing that ever happened to this lake was the Wolf Creek facility. It brought in tons of major tournaments, the Bassmasters Classic, and now what you have at Grand Lake is you got the lake, it gets beat to a froth constantly from tournaments, not recreational fishermen and tournaments, but mainly high quality tournament fishermen. And that's going to be the story in this tournament here, the Toyota Series. Grand Lake has been getting pummeled, hammered for weeks leading up to this tournament. It's getting hammered right now. It's going to get hammered next week. It's just relentless. This is really the worst time of year for any tournament director to have a tournament. The fish right here at Grand Lake right now, they are in the middle of a full-blown spawn here right now. I mean, they've hit it right on top of the spawn, it's really a tragedy for this lake, because we do not need to be fishing these tournaments. No, not just on Grand Lake, but in any lake during the spawn. You know, all these tournament circuits that have been down here the last 2 weeks, and it's going to be here the next 2 weeks in this tournament, they're going to be hammering these fish while they're trying to reproduce. We need to let these fish reproduce without, pulling them off their beds constantly. And that's going to be the deal in this tournament, guys. This is going to be a full-blown bed fishing tournament. Bed fishing. And even if the guys aren't seeing them on the beds, they're still going to be catching them off of beds, because every fish on this lake is on a bed right now. And so from that standpoint, I hate to see that. There's so many other times we could have tournaments. They could schedule all these tournaments in the fall and the winter time, but instead they put them right on top of the spawn. So anyway, enough of a rant on that. So let's talk a little bit about the fishing. First practice day today. Like I said, I probably don't even have to practice for this tournament. I know where all the fish spawn here. I fish so many different springs here. I know the key bedding areas. I know the key docks they spawn around, the key laydowns, the key rocks, and that's what it was today. I mean, I just ran a bunch of water where the fish usually are, and they're there. It's same every spring here. So the problem that you have in this tournament is Grand Lake fish is tiny anyway. Any time of the year, fish is tiny. There's a lot of dead water in Grand Lake, and it tends to concentrate everybody in one small area, and it even concentrates them more when the fish are spawning, because the fish are all in the coves. So the story today and the story in this tournament is like, you go back into a cove and you idle back in there. You'll see 3 or 4 boats on your way in. There'll be boats, every single back end's got a boat in it. And as you're idling out, if you've been fortunate enough to find a place to fish where there's not a boat, as you're idling out, there's more boats idling in. That's the way Grand Lake is right now. and that's going to be the key in this tournament. The key in this tournament is going to be, timing. It's going to be timing, being able to pull up on a little stretch that's got a few fish up on it, ready to bite. I mean, I had, quite a few bites today. I had my hook bent over because there's no reason to stick them because I know they're decent fish. I did actually stick one fish on accident that got hooked, even with my hook rolled over. It was about a 2.5 pounder. But it's just sort of it's typical bed fishing. I mean, and like I said, the Granda right now, the water's a little bit more stained than it has been over the past couple months here. We've got some off-colored water, so the visible sight fishing is not going to be as much of a factor as just bed fishing for, for fish you can't see, but they're in those particular areas. Another situation we have here is that the fish that you can see on beds here, they are extremely shallow because the lake's been, getting pulled down, and a lot of these fish over the past week, they've been making beds, and the lake's coming down and it's leaving these fish on beds in 6 inches of water. I saw a bunch of fish today in beds that, probably in another 2 days, they're going to be on dry land. So what happens in a situation like that, it not only makes the fish a little bit spookier, but it tends to bring those smaller fish up shallow. You don't see big fish bedding shallow like that. The big fish usually bed out of sight, a little bit deeper on there. So for me, it's like, the report that I have, it's like, I had bites and they were spawning fish. I'm sure they were. And as much as I hate to fish for them, that is how this tournament's going to be dominated. There may be a couple guys that get on some little pre-spawn deal, but this tournament is going to get, I'm 95% sure that this tournament is going to get one bed fishing. Whether you can see them or not, those fish will be on beds. So my plan tomorrow is actually, I'm going to go try to look for those 5% tomorrow. I mean, I know where all the fish are bedding at here. I mean, I've just fished down here too much. I know where they all bed at, so I don't need to go beating those fish up. So tomorrow I'm going to spend my day looking for some pre-spawners. If I can get on something that I found a little group or an area that those fish haven't quite moved up on, that could be a sleeper to win the tournament. So that's what I'm going to spend my tomorrow to doing. And based upon how that goes, I'll use the half-a-day practice on Wednesday to sort of refine it. So anyway, guys, that's the deal here. I don't mean to sound negative about it, but it's sort of frustrating me because I've got so many. I'm connected to Grand Lake on a real intimate level. Our family had for decades. We had so many great family experiences down at the trailer. I had so many of my friends down there. It's been a big, Grand Lake's been a huge part of my life, my entire life. And to see the lake not to be what it used to be, that's what to me is sort of sad. And people call it progress. I don't call it progress. I call it a huge step backwards. And there's a lot of things I would do to fix it. If I was in charge of the lake, I could definitely fix it and not have that problem. But that's the reality we find ourselves in today. So anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate you guys watching the videos this week, the tournament reports. Please check back tomorrow and I'll give you the day 2 report. We'll talk to you later.